pod bay doors.
Greetings and welcome to another exciting episode of The Cinematic Traveler. I am your intrepid movie exploring host, Chris, and on this episode, I'm excited. I'm excited because not only am I reviewing a horror film, but it is the latest entry into one of my favorite horror film franchises. This one is 14 years in the making, dear God, and that is Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, will this film reinvigorate the franchise, or will it be dead on arrival? See what I did there? That's pretty clever, I guess. Well, I can't wait to get into it with you. Before I do, I just have to ask a favor. Whatever you are watching or listening to the show on, if you could please hit that subscribe or follow button, I greatly appreciate it. Not only does it help me and the show, but it helps you. You won't miss any of my future episodes, and you can go back and listen to all of my previous amazing reviews and hear my sexy, sexy voice. And on some of them, you get to see my sexy, sexy face. If that doesn't sell you, I don't know what does. So I hope that you are doing well out there, my beloved listener. Now that we are racing headlong into the summer film series, and Hollywood has rewarded us with another film in a franchise that I thought was dead and gone. I was hoping it wasn't, and the quest for money has made a new one, thank God. And of course, that is Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, before I get into my review, I do have to over-explain a couple of things. I am going to give you a spoiler-free review as well as a spoiler-free plot synopsis. Now, in that plot synopsis, I have hidden a movie quote from another movie that either shares some DNA with this film or maybe runs a little parallel. If you can identify that movie quote, get in touch with me through either Instagram at Cinematic Traveler Pod. I have an email address, thecinematictravelerpod@gmail.com, or in the comments section on whatever you are watching or listening to the show on. I will give you a point for the movie quote, and at the end of the month, I add up all the points, and whoever wins gets to pick a movie for me to review next month. Oh my God, how exciting is that? How exciting is that? I know you just peed your pants a little bit because of that exciting news. So please play along. I know it seems a little uncool, but that's the best time of the week to be uncool with Chris. And if you don't want to play the contest, you could let me know what the answer is, just so I know someone's out there listening as I sit behind my fort of blankets here in steamy Charleston, South Carolina, in a shirt and tie. Perhaps not the best choice of attire, but I want to dress up for you to make you feel like I'm actually putting in some work here. So let's talk Final Destination Bloodlines.
Yeah, it's going to be fun on the bun.
This one is directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, who I looked up on IMDb. They've done a lot of TV stuff, a lot of weird TV stuff. Like there's like a Fraggle Rock in there and Kim Possible and this horror movie. I think there's another horror movie called Freaks that they did, but I'm not 100% sure if I've seen it because so many movies have Freaks in the title. But after watching this, I might go check that out. So anyway, this is probably my first foray into their filmography. And I know you are ready to hear about this movie. I'm going to get to it. I just have to over-explain one more thing. I know you're rolling your eyes. I can hear you. I can hear you through my headphones rolling your eyes. That's how bad you are rolling your eyes. But I know this movie, if you are a fan of Final Destination films, there are a lot of surprises in the way things are done, especially in the kills and characters and how they buy it and all that. So I'm going to really give you as brief and vague a plot synopsis as I can because I don't want to spoil anything in this movie because that's half the fun in Final Destination movies. So in the movie, we meet Stephanie, played by Caitlin Santa Juana, a young college student who is struggling with a horrible reoccurring nightmare. This nightmare makes Stephanie return home to investigate a possible connection between this dream and her grandmother Iris. Now, Stephanie is warned by her father and her uncle to stay away from Iris as she is a crazy old bat. But does Stephanie listen? Well, we need a movie to happen, so no, of course she doesn't listen, and she sneaks away to see Iris. Now, Iris tells Stephanie some insane story about death and his plan to kill all who interfere with his process. And she also tells Stephanie how she can break this cycle. Now, to Stephanie, this sounds like a crazy story made up by a crazy old lady. But as fans of the Final Destination series, we all know that death will come calling soon. When members of her family meet their demise in typical Final Destination fashion, Stephanie discovers an event in her family's past that is causing death to prune the branches of her family tree. With some sage advice from returning character Mr. Bloodworth, played by the late, great Tony Todd, Stephanie and her family try to beat Death's game and save their lives. Now, can Stephanie outwit Death in time, or will she learn? Sometimes death is better. Hint, hint. I just had to do it with my really bad New England accent. Well, I'm not going to answer any questions about this movie and spoil anything for you, but I will give you the best review for Final Destination Bloodlines in all of the podcaster YouTube universe, nay, in all of the universe. Now, as I mentioned in the opening to this show, I am a huge fan of this series. I think outside of the fourth one, every one of them is enjoyable, which is a rare feat, and especially in horror franchises, you don't really get out of 5 films before this one, 4 that are worth watching or enjoyable in each their own way. Of course, they have their pattern that was set up in the first one with Death's plan and how it all acts, and half the fun is just trying to guess which way the next character is going to die. So yes, I went into this movie, I guess I would say, with high expectations, or at least hoping that we didn't get a repeat of the 4th in the series. Hopefully we can right the ship here and get things back on track. So let's talk about the positives in Final Destination Bloodlines.
Sounds pleasant.
And again, I'm going to have to be really careful with what I say here because, God, I don't want to spoil anything. If you're going to see this movie, which I'll give you my final recommendation at the end, but don't listen to anything with spoilers because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Let's start with the most obvious and most important things to all of us fans of this film series, and that is the kills and the gore in the film, and it does live up to its predecessors. There are some really unique and creative kills in this film, some sudden ones that will surprise you as you're kind of used to with the franchise. Also some really good fake outs as well. They really have fun setting things up and kind of playing around with that. There's, God, I don't want to spoil it, but there's one that's a setup. I'm not going to spoil it. I won't spoil it, but there's a really good fake out setup that pays off. All right. Anyway, there's a lot of really good stuff in it. A lot of really cringeworthy deaths where you kind of look away from the screen. Sometimes you laugh at them. And if you are one of those sick individuals that loves gore, this movie has lots of it. And I would consider you one of my friends. Because like I said, that's half the fun of these movies is guessing how it's going to eliminate one of the characters and what gruesome way and how nasty it looks. So yes, I will let you know right off the bat that this movie does deliver the typical Final Destination kills that will have you entertained, as it were, throughout the movie. My next positive of the film is it does take a little bit of a different direction from the normal Final Destination movie. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's new ways that the event that starts everything is set up. In fact, it was really cool. I almost kind of wish the movie would have stayed then in that time frame. It would have been really interesting to see what they could have done with things from the past that could kill you, because God knows when the movie starts, things in that time period were kind of built to kill everybody. But it would have been really fun to see it that way. But it's sort of, again, I'm not going to spoil anything. It does a little bit of a difference, which adds a nice little unique twist to it. Also, there are some things that happen. Well, I mean, the movie is called Bloodlines. And like I said, it revolves around Stephanie's family and this event that happened in the past and why death is coming for all of her family. And there's one really cool element that I wish they would have done more with, as far as someone being your blood relative. How about I put it there, and what death will or will not do to them. So there are some good little twists here and there. Like I said, there's some fake outs with the kills. There's an extended scene where, yeah, it was pretty fun because you kept waiting for it to happen, and then you're like, oh wait, what? So again, I know that I'm struggling with this, and maybe I'm rambling a little bit, but I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, it'll make you laugh in a few points, just because you think something happened and it didn't. And you're like, oh, you got me, movie. You got me. So kudos to the filmmakers for that. Also, there are some, I guess, some new wrinkles in Death's plan. It sort of shows Death being a little more creative what it is willing and not willing to do in the film, which I like. Again, I think once this movie hits its stride, yeah, it really does get to play with the stuff that we know from the past, as well as staying within that framework, which was really good way to do it. They don't push it too far out on the envelope to where you're like, what, this isn't a Final Destination movie. But they give you enough for it to be a little more creative and a little newer to you in that regard. I will say the acting is okay to fine to one really big standout in the film. I think our leading actress, Caitlin Santa Juana, as Stephanie, she's a fine protagonist. She sells that she's in this crazy situation where she's trying to beat death and figure out who's going to be next and how they can, get around certain things like they do in every movie. So, you could get her fear for what's going to happen and her trying to stay a step ahead, and she's worried about her family and she wants to keep everybody safe. So you can buy into her as the lead in this movie, at least in that regard. I'll get into some negatives here in a minute, but I think her performance is fine, and I don't want to get too down on it. There's some, we'll get into it in the negatives. How about that? But yeah, some of the acting is just okay. And then there's some, really the standout to me was Richard Harmon as Stephanie's cousin Eric, who you probably know from the trailer. He's the guy in the tattoo parlor. Yeah, he was really the star for me in this movie because he brings some life to it. He's got a sarcastic sense of humor, which I appreciate. He's also very skeptical of the story and the plan. And then when he finds out a few of the twists and turns, he kind of plays into them in a way that I don't want to spoil again. But yeah, you could tell he's having fun with this role, and he does bring some much needed levity and some, he's that character. He's the audience character in the film that you're going to root for throughout the movie. So they really needed him, and he does a fine job here. I guess the last actor that I will mention is Tony Todd. Yes, the legendary horror icon. I think that's safe to say at this point. He is a horror icon, even though he's been in countless other movies. God dang, he had an amazing career. It was great to see him. It was sad because I knew this was his last film. And also, you could tell that he was really at the end of his life. He's very frail looking, which is weird because Tony Todd he was this big man and he had that deep voice, and his voice isn't quite as deep and stuff, but it was still cool to see him on the screen. I'm gonna miss him. He was taken way too soon from us, and he had plenty more horror movies he could have participated. But yes, it was great to see him, and I did get a little emotional when I did see him. I guess the next positive of the film, it is less than 2 hours. I will reward any film for that, especially a horror movie. And this one, like I said earlier, once it finds its stride and it sets off on its path, I think it really starts to move along at a really good pace. It's enjoyable. You're in that Final Destination environment. It has some nice nods to previous films, something that we'll get to in a minute with the negatives. But yeah, it does acknowledge those films, most of them in either subtle ways or more direct ways. So I have to give the film credit for that. Sometimes people come into these franchises and they want to make their own movie and not even, ignore shit from the past. This one embraces everything that came before it. And again, once you're fully invested into the Final Destination part of the movie, it's a fun ride. I would say it's much better than several of the other films in the franchise. It was a nice return to it. So I think they really crafted a nice little, again, return to this Final Destination franchise. However, it is not without its negatives.
Uh-oh, I don't like the sound of that.
And I am going to sort of circle back around to the acting, or maybe more so the characters. There are a lot of characters in this movie that just sort of get pushed to the side. Stephanie has a dad that I forgot was in the movie until he would show up in a scene. You're like, oh yeah, that's her dad. He has no real part in this movie. I don't even know why he's there. She also has this mother who is, I guess, estranged. She just left the family behind. I don't know. They kind of vaguely touch on that. I wish they'd have had a little more explanation of that than what they did, even though I'm sure there are some mothers out there that would love to just hop in an RV and leave their family behind. But she's in there just as this really side character to have them get from point A to point B, and that's kind of it. There's also, I mentioned, She has an uncle who plays a bigger part, but she also has this aunt who, again, a premise that I talked about earlier with people who are not blood related. I thought she was going to play more into that, but she kind of disappears after a while in the movie. Let's see, Stephanie has her brother who plays pretty much her sidekick through the movie, as well as I mentioned Eric, her cousin. She has two other cousins, Bobby and Julia. Bobby gets a little more screen time. Julia, she's just sort of the one you're waiting for to get killed in some horrible way. What an awful thing it is to sit in movies and just wait for someone to die in this horrible, ugly, gruesome death and then laugh at it. What does that say about me? But yeah, she's kind of that character. A lot of them you just really don't connect with. I'll be honest with you, as far as their whole plight, it was really nothing I was that invested in. It wasn't like the first one where you're trying to figure it out with the characters, or the second and third one where you like the characters and you're really invested in seeing where the story's going to go. This one's kind of just sort of average. You're there, they give you enough to understand their predicament and follow along with it, but I wasn't like on the edge of my seat hoping they wouldn't die, except really maybe one or two characters. Everybody else, I was just like, when is it going to happen? So I really wish they would have maybe either cut down on some of the characters or included them more. I don't know how they would have done that, but something was missing in that part of the movie. The next thing is I mentioned earlier, once this movie hits its stride, it really takes off. But the first buildup, I'd say the first third of this movie, I was kind of getting a little bit worried. We weren't getting much happening on the screen. You're getting a lot of the exposition that you're used to. And maybe that's why it felt so draggy, because you've seen this before in all the other ones. So you're like, okay, let's just get on with it. But it seemed like I was just like, okay, come on, let's get there. And you get, I mean, the opening vision that sets all these movies off was really good, especially because it's set in a building that's really tall and heights. I'm not a big fan of heights, which always drives me. Have you ever noticed if you're afraid of heights, people who are not afraid of heights, they have no sympathy for you, no compassion. They will laugh at you. They will force you to take, trips that will be up high and just laugh and scoff at you. I've had strangers smirk at me because I struggled to cross a high bridge or something like that. And they're like, oh, you're afraid of that. I'm like, no other fear. If you had a fear of spiders, people aren't like bringing boxes of spiders in and throwing them on you and laughing at you. No, the fear of heights, that's okay. We could make fun of you. All right, I'm on a tangent there, but that scene did get me on the edge of my seat because of that. But once you get past that scene, it really starts to drag, and you get like one more kill, and it's not the best one. And really, if you start to think about that kill, it kind of messes up the whole movie. But anyway, so I was like, okay, are we gonna get some watered down version of the stuff we love, and this is just gonna be really tame and tepid and not, give us what we want from a Final Destination movie? So be warned, the first, I would say, third of this movie, it takes its time to get there. But once it starts to take off, then it really finds its groove, and it's a lot of fun. And I guess my last negative is almost maybe as a nitpick. While I did appreciate them acknowledging the other movies and bringing in some of the lore from the previous movies, there's points where it's just directly doing what we have seen in other movies, especially the second movie. I really felt like there was a lot of stuff they borrowed, if that is the right term, from Final Destination 2. So yeah, there were points where I was like, oh, we're doing this again. You couldn't come up with something a little more creative here and there instead of borrowing them. But I mean, like I said, I appreciate that they did, but I think, again, I know this sounds very vague because I'm trying not to spoil things. There's, especially at the end, I was like, oh, not this again. We've already done this. Come up with something different. So yeah, that was a little bit of a letdown. Not a huge letdown because they did salvage it with the very end of the movie. That was a pleasant surprise. Thank you so much, Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, for redeeming yourselves with that ending. So overall, my final thoughts for Final Destination Bloodlines, I enjoyed the hell out of it. Like I said, once it starts going, it really just falls right into what you love about these franchises, what the best movies in the franchise brought to you. Some great inventive deaths. I know that's horrible, but come on, fuck it. It's a horror movie. We love that stuff. It gets gory, it gets over the top. It plays around with the stuff that you know from before. And, it makes you laugh. Like I said, there are times in this movie where I thought something happened and it didn't. And I was like, you got me. You got me, movies. But you'll have a lot of fun with it. If you're a fan of these movies, yeah, this is one of the better ones in the franchise. In fact, I'm going to say, as I mentioned earlier, before there were 5 movies, only one of them was bad. Here's now 6 movies, and they've only got one bad one in a horror franchise. So that's a hell of a streak. I hope they make some more. Take some time. You don't have to rush them out. I hope it makes a lot of money, but I'd like to see a little more with this franchise and do more creative things with it and have some fun with it. But overall, if you're a fan of the series and you're coming back to it, you're going to get what you want. If you've never watched any of them, you'll go in and have some fun with this movie if you're a horror fan and you're gore and you love all that stuff. So enjoy it. And speaking of gore, I'll give you a gore score for this film. And this is the only thing I give a number rating for, with 1 being little or no gore and 5 being Terrifier 3 levels of gore. This one is a solid 4. You're going to get a lot of blood, a lot of body parts, and a lot of exploding nasty things. And I loved every fucking minute of it. Oh my god, what is wrong with me? But no, it's a very gory movie, so be warned if you don't like that kind of stuff. It's there. It doesn't linger, so if you're one of those ones who can look away real quick and come back, there was one I had to look away from because it's a kill that I don't like. I've seen it in other movies, and I'm always like, ooh, because it kind of plays into one of my fears of a piece of gardening equipment. How about that? So anyway, overall, like I said, go watch this movie, support it so we can get some more, but and have some fun. It's just a fun horror flick that just fits right in line with the best of the Final Destination series. So here we are. We've reached the end of the episode. If you're still listening or watching, I must have done something right. So again, if you could please subscribe, follow, support the show, share it with your friends, family, share it on your social media. Find me on social media. I always say Instagram's the best way to do it because that's the one I like the most. That's at Cinematic Traveler Pod. I have an email address, the Cinematic Traveler Pod, if you want to get in touch with me. Also, the comment section. I am on Twitter and Blue Sky and all that shit, but I really hardly ever go on there. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me and follow the show. Again, support me, please. I need all the help I can get. We've got some fun, exciting stuff coming up. I do want to apologize. Last weekend, I don't want to say life got in the way. Things came up, and it was kind of on a perfect weekend because there was nothing big coming out last weekend. So kind of took a little break, which helped me with this episode because I've been dying to get back behind this microphone. I will be back probably towards the end of the week. I am going to be doing my review for the film recommended by last month's movie quote contest winner. And it's an interesting movie. I have no idea how I'm going to review it. How do you review a movie with no plot? This is going to be probably one of the bigger challenges. I know I say that every time, but this might be one of the bigger challenges in all of my reviewing episodes. So you'll definitely have to come back and check that out. So before I go, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen or watch my show. I greatly appreciate you as an audience member, and I tell everyone I know I've got the smartest and sexiest audience in all the podcast YouTube universe, and you never fail to live up to those high standards. Now, as you are traveling around on this blue and green ball, bouncing through the cosmos, avoiding death's dastardly plan, I need you to do one thing for me. Go out and do that voodoo that you do so well.
All right, show's over. I'm tired.